Hi, everyone. Welcome to another special edition of Behind the Brand. I'm here with financial expert Winnie Sun, who's going to talk to us all about everything finance and what's going on in the world today. Winnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
For those of my audience who don't know you, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I am managing partner of Sun Group Wealth Partners. You may have seen me. I'm on the CNBC Financial Advisor Council. I'm a Forbes contributor, and I have my own show on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, and Roku called Level Up with Winnie. So I do talk about money pretty much each and every day, helping the average American make sense of what we're going through to get them from point A to point B.
Well, the timing is really good. The whole world is in upheaval, in flux. It's an election year. We're arguably in another great recession. My audience, I think, well, just speaking personally, a lot of my friends and colleagues have either been furloughed or they've been let go, and people are really trying to make sense of what's going on. What is your sense of what's happening right now with stimulus package and CARES Act and all that? Do you have a finger on that pulse?
Absolutely. This is something, Brian, we're watching each and every day right now. We know that, the first round, which was over $2 trillion in the CARES Act, came into place. We do know that the Democrats have already passed the House on their package, and now the Republicans in the Senate are trying to come up with their package, and then at some point it'll be a happy medium, and then everybody will sign off. The president will sign off. We're probably looking at between a $1 to $3 trillion package, and we know that the key discussion points are obviously the unemployment enhancement benefit. We also know that evictions and housing, that's a key concern, and of course our children, and reopening schools and hospitals and student loans. All of these things are sort of weighing over all of us, and all eyes are deciding on whether this can take place. And we do know that tomorrow, being July 31st, is the day where a lot of the deadlines occur, but also that the government goes on recess starting, I think, August 5th. So the next week we'll get an indication what that package looks like.
So let's break it down a little bit and give me maybe your opinions or predictions on what you think is going to happen. So the last stimulus package that happened, basically everyone who made, I think it was under $75,000 individually, or if you filed tax return jointly, it was $150,000 gross. You got $1,200 per person. And then an additional, was it $500 per child? That was
$500 per child if you're under the age of 17.
Right. And so that was, a little bit of a help, better than nothing. I think a lot of people would agree. And so what do you think is going to happen this time? They're talking kind of about the same sort of breakdown, but what's your opinion? Is it enough? Is it something that we need? Is it something that's just causing people to maybe stay home a little bit longer and not go back to work? What is your feeling about that?
Well, so there's two big things. The $1,200 is that stimulus check. That's a check that was sent out for the CARES Act for those of us who earn less than $75,000 per person, $150,000 married couple. Then you would receive that $1,200 check, and you would receive $500 per child under the age of 17. So this round, I think they've learned a lot from the first round, noting that number one, that more than likely there'll be another check, whether it's $1,200 or different amount is yet to be seen. Right now, the talk is, as we know, the HEROES Act, which was introduced by the Democrats that passed the House, does say $1,200 per adult, right? So that's $2,400 for the married couple. And also the HEALS Act that was introduced by the GOP for the Senate also said $1,200. But today, actually, right before the market closed, there was then talk about reducing that $1,200 by the GOP to $1,000. So we'll see how that unfolds. But it's actually an improvement, because just a few weeks ago, the Republicans had said, well, actually, it's only going to be for those who make less than $40,000, which we know is going to be difficult for a lot of Americans that live in areas such as New York, such as California, where standard of living is a lot higher. That $40,000 just doesn't cover enough people. The other thing that they have noted is that under the age of 17 was also too strict. So there's a lot of dependents that are college age, right, that are over the age of 17 that also need help, that maybe were in college or just younger adults that are still at home, millennials, like you mentioned. And the other thing is, we also have a lot of dependents that we have that are over the age, that special needs, senior citizen grandparents that might be dependent. So that threshold is expanding. So they're saying $500 per dependent, up to $6,000 per household. That's what actually the Democrats had initiated, and that's sort of the talking range now. Now that's a separate discussion to unemployment. The unemployment, as you remember, is we still get our state benefit of unemployment if you're unemployed, but then that federal, that enhanced benefit of up to $600 per week was like the critical discussion point, because we know that so many Americans have said, without that $600, I would be in trouble. I might have to leave my house. I might not want to pay rent, and a lot of big financial considerations. So the Democrats said, we hear you. So in their HEALS Act, or actually no, their HEROES Act, I apologize. The HEROES Act, they said they would extend the $600 weekly benefit until January of 2021. Now the Republicans said, well, that's an issue with us because we know that 2/3 of Americans who are currently unemployed are actually making more on unemployment than if they were to go back to work. So therefore, if you're collecting unemployment, you really don't have any incentive to go back to work. In fact, it wouldn't be financially sound for you to go back to work because you're making more money hanging out at home. So they said, instead, this is what we're going to initiate. We'll go ahead and give you an unemployment enhanced benefit until approximately October 5th. And then after October 5th, we're going to do a calculation where we'll recover up to 70% of your previous income level. So the reason why they say that is because they've noted that in most states, the unemployment systems, the technology, the computers are so antiquated that they can't do that 70% calculation, and therefore they need some time to be able to get to that point where they can do that calculation. So that being said, until October 5th, right now, as it states, as of today, that unemployment enhanced benefit, they're going to give you $200 a week versus the Democrats suggesting $600 a week. So certainly just a third of that, but it actually is 100% better than what they offered a couple weeks ago, which was $100 a week. So yeah. I think, there's a lot of room to go, Brian.
Yeah, I agree. And if we just backtrack a little bit in the history, I mean, the additional $600 a week bump, which I think was labeled the pandemic assistance fund, right? Or the pandemic assistance for people who are unemployed. And it really was a catch-all for everyone who was not a W-2 employee. And that would include people like, I don't know, if you're a business owner, I'm a business owner, it probably affects both of us, right? We're probably, we've got some employees, we've got people, but we're basically categorized as a small business between $5 and $20 million. And so in my memory, in my lifetime, this is the first time I can remember ever being offered some sort of assistance, which is fantastic. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are now panicking as time is running out. This is, today is like the last day, and wondering what's ahead. So it's interesting to think about how reliant we are on the government support. At the same time, I'm not waiting or holding my breath for anyone to help me. I'm still out there hustling, and we're doing projects sheltered in place. I've got, if you can see behind me, a little bedroom converted into a crammed home studio where I'm doing a lot of post-production and editing. Yeah. Let's talk about kids back to school. So what are the implications there? I don't know a lot about education except for the fact that I've got kids in the system who are going to elementary school and junior high now. And to me, I feel like schools are scrambling to do their very best, but at the same time, I also recognize that education is a business. And I believe that unless you have butts in seats, you don't get paid or you don't get government assistance. And so it's a little bit of a dilemma, right? You've got schools that want to have kids back in school because that's the only way they can get funded if they're state schools or if they're not private. But at the same time, we're still basically being told by the governor in California to stay in place and not go out unless necessary. It's a total dilemma. How does this impact, do you think, education and families going forward? I mean, I'm in a fortunate position where if I really needed to stay home with my kid and help him learn, well, maybe not math, but maybe English and science and some of these other things. Math is I'll go to Khan Academy for that. But how are some of these other families affected? What are you hearing on the street?
Absolutely. So Brian, I'm in the same boat as you. So I have, I have a 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and 11-year-old at home downstairs right now, and certainly what we're seeing is there's like that concern, right? A lot of employers are concerned because their employees can't get back to work on a regular work schedule because they have to juggle kids at home. So you're absolutely right. The education system traditionally does get paid when our kids go to school. So between you and I, they don't go to school, they're not going to be too happy with us. But we do know with the teachers union and the teachers' concerns that in many parts of the country, our kids are going to be staying at home just like we're staying at home. And what that effect is pretty huge, because not only are they worried about all their mental health and their social health and education health, but then also the impact for parents who are just struggling to make ends meet and still work. And some parents don't have the option. If they don't have school, then they're going to have to find childcare. And in fact, one of my producers that I work with on CNBC, she says, I'm still dropping my kids off at daycare. And so you're still paying for daycare, and yet, or afternoon care, but then what about school? So it's unfortunately there's no easy solution. The answer is we really don't have a choice. We've seen now in other countries where they've opened up schools, they've let students go back, and then they close them back very, very quickly. We've seen that in Korea, we're seeing that in Germany, and so many teachers as well as parents say, I don't think I'm willing to roll those dice. I think as much as I hate it, I'm going to do what Brian says. I'm going to suck it up and make it work. And so there's no easy solution, but I think many of us feel that way.
Yeah, I feel it just like at this point, it's really about common sense. It doesn't make any sense to send our kids back to school when there's really not safety measures in place. I can't imagine how they can make the school safe without completely retrofitting, with air filters and social distancing. It's just not going to happen. And so we're opting right now for the online distance learning. And it's nice because in the school district that we are in Southern California, they've got, I guess, some new programs in place. I'm cautiously optimistic.
I've seen it. It's
But at
actually
the
very
same time,
good.
is it? Oh, good. Well, I'm a huge advocate for teachers and teaching. I love to teach myself, and I appreciate the underappreciated teachers. Um, but this is a curveball. We weren't expecting. We're all just trying to react and get things together and really do the best for the kids. Um, all things considered, it's a tough situation. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about um, loans, business loans, and let me have you weigh in on that. I had the co-founder of Cabbage on the show the other day, and she gave me her opinions on small business loans. And we're very fortunate. If this was 10 years ago, or maybe 10 years plus 2 years ago, this would be a very different discussion between you and I. 2008 was a really hard year for me. It was the year I started this little startup. I cut the cord from being at a big Hollywood studio where I had a big salary, I had a team, I had, all these luxuries and full health benefits, the whole 9 yards. And then I cut the cord right at the end of 2007, heading into '08 with high hopes. And then everything went away. And I was very scared. And frankly, I was hosed. I was really just up a creek and didn't know what to do. And I tried to go to my local bank, which is the one that has a little stagecoach, and they promptly rejected me for a business loan when I needed cash and capital the most to stay afloat. And I literally couldn't get. I went to Bank of California. I went to everywhere. No one would talk to me, and it was really disheartening. And so I asked her what she thought about getting a loan these days. Of course, if you ask Mark Cuban, I saw something that Mark said, and he said, if you get money right now, you're a moron. It's like, well, that doesn't sound positive, but
Well,
what
you're
if
a
you really need
billionaire.
it? Very easy for him to say, I guess,
Right.
right? What are your thoughts on getting a small business loan right now? Especially, I mean, the whole PPP fiasco SBA loan disaster where everyone applied and only the rich and wealthy organizations and companies got the first cut. None of the people, it seems like, who really needed it got it. What are your thoughts?
Well, Brian, I'm a financial advisor, so my goal is always to keep my clients financially solvent long term. And so, we've talked to a lot of clients about that. And so I think we're in a situation where we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic. We don't know if it's going to be another 6 months, if it's going to be another 18 months. And so there's a lot of unknowns. I think that there is no shame and there's no reason why you shouldn't apply for this PPP loan. As well as apply for the EIDL, and in the next round we're told that there'll probably be another round of PPP stimulus loans coming out, especially those companies have suffered more than 50% of their income, probably even have more benefits, and especially for those companies that have less than 10 employees, they'll make sure there's enough money. So a lot of times you'll say, well, like the same argument of, I'm not going to file for unemployment because I'm not there yet, right? I don't think I need the loan because I'm not there yet. I would say, if you're even thinking that you might need that loan, I would absolutely apply and receive that loan, because the terms are so attractive. The interest rate is so low. Plus, a lot of it's being forgiven if you are continuing your payroll or you're paying rent on your office space. Let that be a decision. If you don't need the money, you can always pay the money back. But like Brian, you made a perfect statement earlier. It is generally so difficult for most startups or smaller businesses to get attractive funding. So I think that I told this to clients. I said, you know what? I think you should do it, and I think you should. If you're considering it, you should do it. And worst case, you don't need it, you pay it back. And don't worry about other people are doing and not doing. And don't worry about Mark Cuban. Worry about you and your business, because when you need help, trust me, you're not going to be able to reach out to Mark Cuban for help.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's sound advice. I think it's very sound advice. We've got some cash flow. Everything's going fine now, but you're right. We don't know what's going to happen in 3, 6, 9, 12 months. This could get worse. That certainly happened to me in 2008. I didn't think it could get any worse, and then it just continued to it was bad. And so, yeah, why not, right? Get the loan.
Yeah.
Stick the money in the bank.
The interest is low, too.
And I think you don't have to pay it back for usually like 12 months if it's the SBA. Right?
Well, it's more than that now, because the PPP loan, I think it's you have to get your information in there if you want your portion forgiven. But if you don't want it forgiven, or I think there's another loan where you can actually have it for quite a few years. I'm gonna have to check with you want to check with your accountant on this, but you have more years. And remember, the feds have kept interest rates at near zero levels, so the borrowing on these loans, I believe it's like 3 or 4%. It's very attractive lending rates.
Yeah, and we don't even know what's going to happen with real estate, right? Like, so as we see unemployment come to an end, depending on what happens, there might be foreclosures. The real estate market might take a dive. I mean, interest rates are at an all-time low, but that's to keep things going, right? To keep things afloat. And so we're really in this, I feel like, moment where we just don't know. We're still in this limbo moment where we're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, right?
Right, absolutely. And there's so many unknowns, right? I mean, like, we didn't expect our family members and friends to get COVID. We are hoping that business can continue as normal, but what if like what if your partner, like, let's say you have a business partner, and he or she gets sick? What happens then? And there's so many retrofits and changes that your business will need to take in order to get back to normal. Plus, I was just speaking to an attorney last week, an immigration attorney, right? And last year was fine. This year is not fine. He had to put a notice to his real estate for his commercial office space that he can't pay rent starting next month. And I just, like this today, just before we got on here, a huge company in the bridal and prom space just declared bankruptcy last week. So you don't know what you don't know. And I think there's no shame right now to receive this federal relief for your business. Worst case, you pay it back. It's going to be okay. You're not Shake Shack or the Lakers, so I think you're okay.
Yeah. So last question, I guess, is, out of the ashes is always born something great. We saw in the last decade, some of these great companies were born from the disaster. Where's the white space now? So if you're an opportunist, if you are an entrepreneur, where do you think the white space is? What are the opportunities right now? While everyone's panicking and pulling back, how can we charge forward, and take advantage?
I love that you asked this question, Brian, because this is so true. I mean, I built my practice in the financial space in like January of 2000 when literally the market crashed and things were so bleak. And then building that time was really one of the most difficult times. But the most beautiful thing is the most successful businesses are built in the most difficult times. So right now, it is very challenging. You're hearing about people going and becoming gig workers and whatnot, but it's doing what you're doing, Brian. It's continue to grow your brand. It's continue to work from home, get really crafty, find a space that you're comfortable with. Maybe it's video, maybe it's podcasting, maybe it's blogging and writing articles. Get your genius out there. Make sure that people don't have to work that hard to find you. Make sure that you're out there grabbing opportunities, telling people what opportunities could be if they were work with you or do things with you, and make sure whatever you do, you don't crawl underneath a rock. Right now, you should be thinking about, I read a statistic on, I'm really big on social media, and someone said, it takes 30 times for someone to remember you on any platform. So it's not your next customer or client's job to find you. That's your job. So you need to be out there telling your story, because if you don't tell your story, then I always say it doesn't matter how good a financial advisor I am, and I'm actually really good, but if no one knows that I exist, I don't exist. And whose job is it to make sure that I exist? It's my job.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man,